Well, folks, here we are. They said it couldn't be done. Actually, in reality, very few people said it couldn't be done. I really have very few haters. Maybe a few people on Amazon who have left me some nasty feedback over the years would have said that it couldn't be done. But besides that, most people have just said, go for it. And now it's done, 1,000 subscribers. Mostly just want to say a deep thank you to you guys who have watched my videos, some other YouTubers who have shouted me out and helped me along. It just feels really good, and I thought that it could be cool today for those of you who have been following with me for a little bit. I think there are probably a good number of people who will not find this interesting at all. But for the rest of you to pull back the curtain a little bit on a little bit of my story, particularly professionally, and kind of how I got to where I am today. I've only been doing YouTube for the past 2 to 3 months, I'd say. But my resale and especially my professional journey before that has been a lot longer. So I thought I would elaborate a little bit about that today. And my hope for this little tale today is really just that maybe some of you would find something relatable in it, that it would be encouraging to somebody, and just that it helps you guys get to know me a little bit better. So to help you guys really understand the story of Phoenix Resale, I actually have to start a little bit earlier, before I had even heard of resale at all. I was fresh out of college, just married, and really searching for what I wanted to do with my career. Really had no idea. Came out with a degree in international studies. Had thought that maybe I'd want to live abroad or work for an international corporation or something like that, but then got married and found myself rooted here in Lexington, Kentucky, with not a whole lot of opportunity in that vein. So I was looking to branch out a little bit. Had worked at a bank for a little bit as I was graduating, trying to save up money for, marriage. Shortly after that, when I was looking for something more full-time that had better pay, I became a debt collector for Aramark. Not sure if you guys have ever heard of that. It's a business services company and was hands down the worst job I have ever had. It was gray cubicles as far as the eye could see, very much a culture of you're kind of a cog in a machine. And work that was just really repetitive, and I was on the phone all day with people who just did not want to talk to me. Luckily, not long after I started working there, a position opened up with a company that I'd been trying to get hired onto for a while, a nonprofit called Community Ventures. I became a home ownership counselor there and was there for around 9 months, and that was a good job. The benefits were solid, I liked the people I worked with. But what I was really pursuing in having these multiple jobs, being the very stereotypical millennial job hopper, I realized more and more what I was looking for was freedom. I was looking for a position and a culture of you do your job and do it well, and other than that, we really don't care how or when or what you're doing. Which I realize is a super presumptuous thing to hope for, especially in an entry-level job, because while there are some companies that do that, normally it takes people 15 or 20 years to work into a role with that kind of agency. So as I was working at CV, I realized that it actually was becoming less and less of that kind of company because management had transitioned and they started implementing a lot more HR policies, like all these clock-in rules and restrictions on the few freedoms that the workers, even the upper management, did have. I started to see less and less of a future with that company, and at the same time, my friends who owned a small coin wholesaling company, not like Bitcoin, but actual collectible coins, they were looking to hire someone with their small but rapidly growing business. So one of my friends who owned the company reached out to me and said, hey, are you happy with what you're doing? Would you consider coming along for the ride with us? We really could use the help. And I ultimately said yes. So I went to work with my friend's company. It was just me and a couple of my friends in the beginning, and I was really happy because that higher level of freedom that I was really wanting out of the position was there. We worked 4-day, 10-hour-a-day weeks, so I got longer weekends, and on days when there wasn't as much to do, we would just go home early, and then some days when there was more to do, we would work later. And it was just more of the environment that I had been looking for in my previous position. And a few months into working with my friends, my wife had started law school, and I was actually looking for a side hustle. So I was watching a bunch of random YouTube videos on like best side hustles and like what you can do to earn extra money. I was looking to maybe do a little more investing or saving for our home that we were looking to get. And I almost simultaneously stumbled upon the Resale's YouTube channel about how to flip books from thrift stores onto Amazon, and also Gary Vee's Trash Talk. And those two things combined really made me wonder, man, like, could flipping things from like garage sales and thrift stores online really be like a viable source of income? And if so, why couldn't I do that? So I started hitting up the thrifts and the garage sales. I remember the first ever thing that I flipped was this big wooden sign that was like some sort of like an equestrian sign, like that you'd see at like a horse farm. Bought it for $5 at Goodwill and flipped it on Facebook Marketplace within just a couple days for $40. So I got bitten with the resale bug pretty quickly, pretty early on. It was a bummer because it was fall, so yard sales were closing down, but I used that opportunity to double down a little bit on the book game, started going to more like book sales and church sales and things like that. So I was happy because the side hustle had really started to take form, but at the same time, things were kind of falling apart at work. And even to this day, it's kind of hard to explain exactly what happened, but as time went on, it became clearer and clearer that our expectations for my position just were not aligned. They expected me to work a lot faster and with more precision than I was really able to. I was pointing fingers at the standards themselves and the training that I had received. They were pointing fingers at just my low performance and lack of aptitude. It even got to the point where like I would go into work each day at a company like with some of my good friends, like just worried that something would surface that I hadn't done correctly, and that it would just cause a bunch of like relational and corporate turbulence. And part of what was hard for me too was just hearing for really the first time that I was just really underperforming. At all the other jobs, summer jobs and things like that that I'd had in the past, my employers had been like really sorry to see me go when the term ended. So I was used to always just like doing a really good job at work, and to be in this position where I was clearly underperforming, whether it was me or the expectations, and in reality I think it was some of both, was just really hard. And I think a lot of it was also just due to the fact that like we were three 20-something-year-old dudes doing our best to like run a company in a situation where we were all at least somewhat out of our depth, and perhaps me even most so. Anyway, all that to say, as you guys have probably guessed by now, we ended up reaching a boiling point and parting ways. And I mean, all things considered, we did it in a pretty healthy way. They also gave me a really generous severance in an attempt to like send me out the door in a healthy way. But despite that generosity, that season in reality was still really hard for me. I was already pretty insecure about my career, just having had so many jobs, and wanting deep down just to find something that I was good at and that I enjoyed, that I could just stick with for a long time, and just having this sense of not being able to for whatever reason. So having that deep desire and then failing to do that even at the company of like my good friends just was really hard on me emotionally. So here I was out of a job and looking around for more work. I still did have the resale side hustle, which was a really good thing, and this actually was the point where I decided to give it the name Phoenix Resale, because it was my hope for the company that something beautiful would come out of the ashes of that failed career, that destroyed job opportunity, and I hoped that the name would be symbolic and prophetic of what would become of the business. So on the bright side, I did have a lot more time to really put all of my energy into that, as I was simultaneously applying to other jobs, trying to find more part-time or full-time work just to supplement our income whenever the severance were to run out. And while resale was going pretty well, it was just so young that I knew it wasn't ready to support us full-time. I had only been doing it for, a few months at that point. So to try to take it full time just seemed premature. Turned out that after a couple months, all of my applications, all my leads for full-time positions had not panned out yet. So I ended up going to work at a coffee shop just for some part-time work. And it was at that point that my coin friends of all people reached back out to me and said, hey man, we realize you're coming up on what may be a tough spot financially. You're at the coffee shop. They were doing like maybe a little bit better than minimum wage plus tips for me. And they basically said, man, we've got like some grunt work around here. We've got another position that like maybe you could fit a little bit better in. So if you'd like to come back and, work for us at like a lower wage and with like some different expectations, hopefully working into a different position, we're happy to give it another shot. And this was a really tough decision for me given what had happened the first time, given the emotional state that honestly I was still in about it. But ultimately I was like, well, it pays more than the coffee shop and it'll give me still a chance to hopefully build this resale thing and see if it could maybe become a full-time gig eventually. And so I went back and I was hopeful, and the good side of it was that, for Erica and I, we were just in a more sustainable position financially. I knew that the guys ultimately did have my best interest in mind given how they had treated me going out the door the last time. But ultimately, as time went on and I did try to progress into that other role that they had in mind for me, it became more and more clear that the problem in the first place was not actually the position, it was just me. Or perhaps more generously to myself, it was the relational dynamics that were at play there that clearly were not going to change. And so around month 5 of my second time being employed there, they fired me again. And you can probably imagine what that would do to the heart of a dude who already feels like a professional failure. And honestly, even deeper than that, a failure as a husband, because at this time, my wife was not working, she was in school. I was the only one who was responsible for providing for our daily needs. And so to have that door slammed shut a second time after I had willingly chosen to go back in hopes of a different outcome really just brought me to a new low. Now the good side of all of this is that when I went back to work for that company the second time, not only did I not stop flipping stuff online, I actually redoubled my efforts. I went to more yard sales and book sales and was buying law school textbooks from Erica's friends to flip online because I never again wanted to feel as helpless as I did after that first time getting fired and having a very limited side hustle revenue stream that could support us in the event of that kind of a financial emergency. And so as a result of that, the business had actually grown in that 5-month span to something much more consistent and much more significant than it was beforehand. And as a result, Erica and I had a conversation, and this was just this last September or so, that rather than looking for another full-time job and trying to do resale as a side hustle, I would actually attempt to do resale full-time and potentially become a substitute teacher as a supplement for any gap that still existed between the income I could generate and our bills. And glory to God, that month I only ended up subbing twice and have not since then. And so that second time that I got fired ended up giving a new depth of significance to the name Phoenix Resale, because not only was the business initially born out of suffering and trials and destruction, but it also was reborn after all that stuff happened a second time in I would say an even worse way. And so the name Phoenix Resale, while it is kind of tacky and even kind of confusing because I don't even live in Phoenix, it's one of deep significance for me and one that reminds me every time I think about it to just be grateful for what I have and the way that I'm able to provide for my family, for the fact that I get to do something that I enjoy every day and even have a job that gives me the freedom that I was desiring from all of those early jobs. So anyway, guys, that's just a little bit of a glimpse into my personal journey and why I love resale so much. Like I said, I hope that it has been encouraging to somebody. Maybe some of you guys have some similar backgrounds. If so, I'd love to hear about it. in the comments, or you can DM me on Instagram. But I do just want to end by saying a deep and sincere thank you to anybody who has so much as clicked on one of my videos, because the idea that there's anybody out there that is interested in what I'm doing each day, whether it's packing orders or figuring out good stuff to sell on Amazon or eBay, I'm just sincerely grateful to you guys for showing the support that you have. So thank you guys again for watching and for continuing to watch, and I will catch you guys on the flip.